Hello again. For thousands of years, people in Northern Europe have celebrated the winter solstice by telling their children the story of a mythical figure, an old man with a long white beard, his face partly concealed by a hood, who visits our homes around the time of the shortest day of the year. This mysterious figure, who leaves gifts for children, was once known as the Yule Father or Father Yule, and his story goes back at least 2,500 years before the birth of Christ. In other words, thousands of years before there even was a Christmas. The earliest evidence for this mysterious figure is to be found in a little museum in Dagenham. In 1922, Dagenham was still an Essex village which had not yet been engulfed by the sprawling suburbs of London. When sewer pipes were being laid on some marshland where later the Ford car factory would be built, a curious piece of wood was found in one of the trenches which were being dug. It was a crude and grotesque representation of a human figure, about 18 inches long. The Dagenham idol is very similar to one found in a Danish bog in the late 19th century known as the Brojemberg idol. The interesting thing about these idols was that in both cases the left eye was shown to be either missing or injured. In the figure from Brojemberg, one eye is neatly carved and the other shown just by an incised line. The Dagenham idol shows the same effect by having a large deep pit for the right eye and a shallow indentation for the left. In short, if these were meant to represent gods, then the gods depicted had one eye either missing or injured. The Dagenham idol and also the one from Boddenberg are both likely to be depictions of gods, idols set up to be venerated. They show gods in human form as men who have once had two eyes but somehow lost one of them. They are so similar that it seems almost certain that they belong to the same tradition. One was found in Denmark, which would later be the home of the Vikings, the place where the Norse gods were worshipped. One of those Norse gods became a man and walked the earth. He had only one eye. Given all this, it surely requires no great stretch of the imagination to conclude that the cult object uncovered in Dagenham is meant to be the god who would 3,000 years later be known as Odin. Odin, ruler of the Norse gods, was also known as Wotan or Woden. We encounter his name every week, for Wednesday is none other than a corruption of Woden's Day. Other days of the week are named after Norse gods and goddesses, such as Tuesday, Tyre's Day, and Thursday, which is Thor's Day, and also, of course, Friday, Freya's Day. Odin was renowned for his magical ability. In other words, he was a sorcerer. He was the oldest of the gods and also the wisest. He hadn't always been wise, though. He had to seek wisdom. Odin decided he wished to become the wisest of the gods and went to visit a minor god of whom few people will today have heard. This was Mimir, who was the guardian of a magic well called Mimirsbrunner, which simply meant Mimir's well. Those who drank from this well acquired wisdom. The guardian of the well wouldn't allow just anybody to take a draught from his well, though. He always exacted a price, even from the chief god. In this case, Mimir demanded that Odin sacrifice one of his eyes and cast it into the well. This Odin did and was rewarded with a hornful of water from the well, which was how he became wiser than any man or god. The Icelandic Eddas give us a good description of Odin's appearance and also some idea of how he conducted himself. His practice of visiting our world in the guise of an old man is mentioned, and he's described as having the appearance of a very old man with a white beard, and his face concealed in part by a hood, making it difficult sometimes to see his face. He wore this so that he wouldn't be identified by the fact that he was missing an eye. One of Odin's many titles in the Edda is Yule Father, and he is associated with feasting and revels at midwinter. Although it has a slightly archaic sound to it, the word Yule is still current in modern English, as in Yuletide greetings. Thus we have arriving in late December an old man with a long white beard, whose face is partly concealed by a hood, and who goes by the name of Yule Father or Father Yule. Nor are these the only similarities with the Father Christmas for whom children so anxiously wait on Christmas Eve. In Scandinavia and Germany, before the countries there became fully Christianized, children expected Odin, as Yule Father, to visit their homes around Midwinter's Day, the winter solstice on the 21st of December. They would fill their shoes with straw and carrots, leaving them by the hearth. Odin rode an 8-legged horse called Sleipnir, and this was supposed to provide fodder for Odin's mount if he should come in the night. In the morning, the straw and carrots were gone and the shoes filled with sweets. Here then is a custom which must surely have persisted in folk memory, that is to say, being passed down orally through the generations for at least 1,000 years, and almost certainly much longer. Although it is less common today, some children in Europe still place a glass of alcoholic beverage and a few carrots out on Christmas Eve for Father Christmas and his reindeer. The wizard or demigod in a chariot being drawn by horned animals didn't begin with Father Christmas. We've seen the startling resemblance which Odin Allfather bears to Father Christmas, but another Norse god had a curious mode of transport which we might recognise. In the saga known as the Prose Edda, it is related that Thor drives a chariot pulled by 2 goats, called Teeth Bearer and Teeth Grinder. The similarity between Father Christmas and his reindeer is striking. It is likely that both legends have a common source in Indo-European mythology. This is especially so when we recollect that Father Christmas, in older stories told as late as the early 19th century, rode not in a sleigh pulled by reindeer, but rather one drawn by a goat. In some old illustrations, he's actually shown riding a goat, much as one would a horse. When Christianity arrived in Europe, it either suppressed the old gods or commandeered them for its own purposes. The same was done with festivals, of course. The Celtic goddess Brigid, for instance, was turned into Saint Brigid, and Oimelt, her festival day in early spring, beginning of February, was converted into Candlemas. The same has happened with Odin, who has been turned into Saint Nicholas, of which name Santa Claus is, of course, a corruption. Anybody wishing to see the original archetype of the Yule Father, Father Christmas, can visit the Valence House Museum in Becontree and see for themselves the depiction of this mythical figure dating back over 4,000 years. In the description to this video, I give a link to the website of the museum which now houses the so-called Dagenham idol.